Alright, welcome back guys. Just want to make this video real quick to show you how to tie a Clouser minnow that's going to be much more durable than just the traditional way of tying it. This is nothing that I came up with myself. You know, guys like Lefty would tie their Clousers this way. Tyers like Dave Scope tie all their Clousers this way. And the main difference is if you've already tied a traditional Clouser, you know that the bucktail, usually you're tying olive over white. The white portion will go underneath the hook and you go around the dumbbell eyes. Now what happens is when you span the dumbbell eyes and you're fishing this fly and it's bouncing off rocks and who knows what on the bottom, you end up getting like frays in your bucktail. I actually have an example case here. This is the first fly I ever caught a striper on. I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up from all the way back there, but you can see this one's frayed from hitting rocks on the bottom, fishing in shallow estuaries. It's all frayed. Now this fly is going to fish just fine. This isn't a huge deal, but to keep your flies looking nice and just staying intact longer, if you time the way I'm going to show you today, they're just going to hold up a little bit better. I had an example case, I just dropped it. Alright, recovered my example here. So this is how we're going to be tying it today. I'm not sure if you can see from all the way back there, but both portions of the bucktail are tied on top of the hook. And it veils the hook really nicely and everything stays off the bottom, so when you're bouncing this off rocks you're not going to have your bucktail split on you. But yeah, I think that's all you really need to know. Just wanted to preface the tying with that, and we'll get right into the tying. We got a hook in the vise here, tying this today on a Mustad 34007, size 1. Starting off with some Vivus 140 in white. Just going to go ahead and lay down a little thread base starting right behind the hook eye. First thing we got to do here is attach our dumbbell eyes. So everyone kind of has their own method of doing this to try and prevent spin. Chances are they're gonna spin on you eventually. There's some things you can do to make that happen maybe later in the fly's life. But anyway, how I attach my dumbbell eyes is I line the front of my eyes up with the back edge of the hook point or the hook eye, and I kind of just get my thread to a point where it is hanging below the middle of my dumbbell eyes. Really, the most important thing about this fly is you want to tie it in at a point where you can create a nice tapered tie-in point and leave yourself enough room to tie in your bucktail. So you just don't want them too far forward. But you'll kind of find your sweet spot. Right there looks about right. So what I do is I catch these with 3 wraps one way, then I take my fingers and straighten it out and go 3 wraps the other way, keeping fairly good tension on the eyes, and then I just come and do 10 each way. Kind of straighten them out again. Alright, that's about good. And then the last thing we do here, you have some room to play with them a little bit, is we're going to go over the hook but under the eyes like that. Do that 6 times, and then once you got your 6 there, you're going to really lock down your bobbin and pull away from the fly, and then a couple wraps behind to lock in that tension. And what that does is basically we have all the wraps crisscrossing over the dumbbell eyes to get them on straight and secure, and then we're basically wrapping around the bottom of those crisscross wraps, and when you pull forward, you tighten up and squeeze them. This sucks the dumbbell eyes down to the fly and just prevents your flies from spinning. If you want, you can put a little dab of super glue on them right now. Whatever you want to do. For the sake of tying this, just gonna move backwards here and lay down a thread base to about the hook point. Doesn't have to be exact here. I like giving my bobbin a little clockwise spin to tighten up the thread, and then I move forward with open spiral wraps. You see, it kind of gives the fly a bit of like a segmentation, gilly, scaly look. And then once you get to the back of the dumbbell eyes, go ahead and invert your fly, and we're going to be tying our bucktail in up here. Honestly, these eyes could be like a couple thread wraps more forward for my taste, but be just fine here. Take a couple wraps, move your thread just a little bit. You don't want to be tying right at the the middle of the dumbbell eyes, so 2 or 3 wraps away from the dumbbell eyes will give you enough distance. Now we're going to start with our first tie in a bucktail. So Quick note about bucktails here. I'm tying this one in sort of like a tutti frutti color like I showed you in the beginning. So we got like this yellowy chartreuse and pink. Now, if you do have a whole bucktail, one thing about hair selection is if you have a whole bucktail available to you, for these Clousers, I like taking hairs from the upper portion. I'm not sure if that's in focus here, but I like taking hairs from the upper portion. These hairs from the mid to lower sections of the bucktail, they're hollow, so when you tighten down on them, they'll kind of flare out on you, and that's great for flies like hollow flies, things where you want flare. But for the Clouser, we don't really want flare, so we're going to stick to hairs from the top portion of this bucktail. Now, you go and select, it's easier if you put the bucktail down on the table and pull off a little piece and get focus back on our hook here. Just coming and standing up a few hairs. I tie my Clousers fairly sparse, just a personal preference. Now, when you do cut that clump of bucktail, let me get this in focus. When you do have this clump of bucktail hair, what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab the tips of your longest fibers, and then you're gonna take your fingers and pull out all the shorter hairs. This'll leave us with just the longest hairs, which is what we're gonna want to tie in. This prevents from having a Clouser with like flyaways that come off, you know, midway down the hook. Now, as far as measuring how long we want our body, I go just shy of 2 hook lengths. So what I'll do is, and feel free if you want to be picky, you can pluck out some of these errant fibers. I actually see some shorter ones that are still in there. Sometimes you really gotta kind of beat your bucktail to get those shorter ones out. But we're good with this. Now we're going to take a rough measurement, right? So here's 1 hook length, and you transfer that to the back. There's 2, right? So, quick note about cutting your bucktail. You're going to want to put a shallow angle on this to create sort of a tapered head when we stack these up, like up here. But you don't want to cut like this. If you cut like this, the scissors are going to push all the hairs away from each other and you end up with this jagged cut. These scissors are incredibly dull and we're still going to get a clean cut. What you do is angle it towards your fingers like this, and you'll see you get a nice clean cut like that. So take your clump in your hand and lay it on the front of the hook. This hair is really soft, so it does want to slide on me. What I do is I take 2 gathering wraps like that, and then I kind of come in, make sure everything's kind of neat on top. And this hair has a tendency to want to roll on me. And then you're just gonna, see, just like that. You're gonna take progressively tighter wraps as you get to the hook eye. So really secure in that bucktail, and then you're gonna work back up to your tying point, and then let your thread hang right in the middle there. So there's our first piece. Not perfectly straight, but good enough. Now we're going to tie in our flash. What I like to do is I like to tie in 3 pieces of flash, but I'll show you here in a second. But I'll do 2 pearl and 1 red. I just like throwing a little bit of red in there. What we're going to do with this is double it over our tying thread, at roughly the midpoint of the flash, and then this is going to allow us to place this right on top. So you see I can sort of slide this around my thread, place this right on top of the fly, and now it's not going to move, and you lay it back, take a few wraps over it to secure it. Advance your thread just a turn or 2, and we're going to be tying in our last bit of bucktail here. So every bucktail is different. You can see this is a bit more wiry. The yellow one is straight, so this is going to kind of give us more volume. Still taken from the top portion of our bucktail here. And go and trim off a little piece. Just like before, grab your longest fibers and pull out all that short stuff. This one has a lot of shorter hairs in it. I'm really going to get all those short fibers out. This one's going to end up being pretty sparse. Now you don't have to measure this one 2 times to the hook length because we have our previous tie-in to measure against, right? So you just kind of, you see that? You just lay it on top. You can have it go slightly longer than that first tie-in, but you want it to be pretty close. About there is good. Same as before, shallow angle, towards your fingers. And then we're just going to tie this in. A couple loose gathering wraps. Tidy everything up. And we're going to start applying tension as you work down. Sometimes you end up with a little ledge like that if you don't butt your butts right up to the hook eye. You can just kind of clean that up with your thread wraps. Now all we got to do is just throw in a whip finish and we're done. Do 5 or 6 turn whip finish. That's all there is to it. As far as finishing the fly, you can use super glue and just hammer this thing if you really want to make it durable. I'm just going to use a little bit of UV resin. And just a coat. Spread it around over all my thread wraps. You can throw a little extra on your dumbbell eyes here if you want. Definitely won't hurt. Then we're just going to hit it with our torch. Yeah, it looks like that yellow bucktail sort of slid away from me on that one, but you know, this video is just to showcase the tying style, even if this isn't the perfect subject. But there you go. That's how you tie a more durable Clouser minnow. Thanks for watching.